Such a thank you, Brack, for such a generous and kind introduction. Welcome, and also thank you to everyone who is coming to this very first live recording of MX Asian American. Um, so, since we only have about an hour and also questions from the audience, we'll get started right away. So, Jung, please share with us what your upbringing was like, where you grew up, and your personal experiences of public education.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Brack from Alexandria Library and Karen Zheng from MX Asian American Podcast for having me. I've been looking forward to tonight, and thank you for all the participants joining. I see people ranging from my mom and dad to my friends from college to mentors and mentees. So thank you everyone for being here. So to start off, as Karen asked, I want to share that my Asian American journey started from Queens, and I want to be very clear to any listeners, not necessarily the ones here today, but for any listeners, that everyone's Asian American journey is very different, and that there is a rich diversity in stories. Some even though I might look similar to other, even my brother or other Koreans, there's such a big diversity in first gen, second gen, 1.5, 1.7 gen Asians. So for me, I was the first person in my country to be born in America. So I was the first citizen as well. And I remember when I was younger, even though it was a rich, diverse place like New York, I still remember that I wanted to be white. And it was actually quite puzzling to me when I met my first group of Asians who were proud to be who they were. That was probably like later on in college. And it took a long time for me to accept my Korean and Asian American identity. And not only that, as an Asian American, it's not my job just to fit into America, but I have something to add. I have something to contribute to my neighbors, my community, and this country. That took a really long time for me to unpack. So I was an English as a second language student. So I went through that struggle. So that was the beginning of my public school experience. And then my elementary school started off being pretty predominantly white Caucasian, but my church community that my dad is a pastor at was a very Korean, basically a Korean immigrant church. So it was two different worlds where I was only speaking Korean at home, and I met people all the time who just came from Korea and they're so jet lagged, like finding their way in America, and seeing my parents help them in ways of helping them find housing, figuring out insurance, figuring out the crazy citizen process that a lot of immigrants have to go through. So yeah, I saw all of that. And I also saw how hard it was to fit in school. So that was like, I was part of like two very different communities growing up. And I always really admired the family values of like how much my parents poured into me and my brother, and the hustle that the Korean American community had.
Thank you so much for sharing. While you were sharing, I was just thinking of the book Racial Melancholia, where it talks about racial dissociation. And I think that's similar to your experience where you feel like you have to compartmentalize your two identities. Like there's this space where I have to be American, and then there's this space where I have to be Asian, or like I feel more comfortable as an Asian. Um, and when you were talking about trying to or learning English as a second language, I also took ESOL when I was younger, so I understand. And I wanted to ask if you experienced any like microaggressions or racism during your schooling years, and if so, how did you handle it?
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely. There were plenty of remarks that my classmates made that now that I'm older, I know, yeah, they just didn't know any better. Or even they were probably just really curious. They just never have talked to an Asian girl before. So I remember even one of my classmates, like we were in class and we sit in a table format. And then I don't know, it's probably just like doing the class we're supposed to do. And then he was just like looking at me. And then I looked back and I'm like, why is he looking at me? And then he was like, so Jung, like, can you see well like that? Like with your eyes? Like, and then like, I was so traumatized. I was like, what?
Wait, that is so rude. What?
And then for me, I was so like, oh, what? How do I even respond to that? And then his classmates, actually, like, even though we were in elementary school, I think the others were old enough to know, like, dude, don't say that, right? There was people who were old enough to know that. And then thinking back, I think he genuinely didn't know how to talk or like how to ask that kind of question. And I think like when I was younger and I was still figuring out my Asian American identity, it was very piercing to me. But now, if that were to happen, I would think it's really funny. Like, I would spark. If that happened to me now, I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, come here, sit down. Let's have a talk." Yeah, like there must be other questions on your mind if that's what you want to ask about.
In fact, I can see, right?
Karen, actually, I'm like legally blind without my
Oh no.
contacts. So my eyes actually are really bad, but
Okay, just ignore what I just said
yeah,
then.
yeah. But yes, it's very different, right? Like where I was then, I was just so like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's talk, sure. Unless
Mhm.
they're like, if I think they're like unsafe or a crazy person, then I would, like disengage, use my New York street, like, okay, we're not going there.
But yeah, it just shows that you've grown as a person. Now you have the language to like combat whatever comes at you. And following that, and you said that was like in elementary school, right?
Mhm.
So following that, what was your college experience like, and why and how you decided to become a data scientist?
Yeah. So in college, now that I think about it, I think college I was exposed to people of a different income bracket than my upbringing, because for my public school experiences, I went to Title I schools without even knowing they were Title I schools. And
Me too,
yeah,
actually.
right. Like what is this fancy education language? Like now that I studied education policy, I'm like, oh, well, so yeah, back when I was growing up, I didn't really have a sense of like income or like social capital, that sort of deal. But when I went to college, I think I saw a lot more, and we were all older too because we're in college. I saw a lot more pride in like Asian culture and people who want to know Asian history. So even my husband was really active in Asian Student Association, and there were other groups that I met as well. So seeing that helped me unpack like, oh, like being Asian is something that I can love about myself. And it's something that I want to embrace. And I realized that coming from a different background also helped me understand more people easily because I'm used to figuring out what other people are saying, especially when my Korean is not perfect. I need to like rely on body language and like their tone. So I really appreciate and I'm thankful that because I'm Asian, I can understand more people better and quicker and maybe in more depth than I could have if I wasn't Asian or spoke a different language. And then moving on to one of my favorite topics, data science. So like as a young girl, I've always loved math and I've always looked up to my teacher. So I always thought I was going to become a math teacher one day. And that a later topic. But first, I struggled really hard in college because suddenly math became really hard. And I was like losing, I felt like I was
I
losing a lot of,
agree. Well, math was always hard, but I agree.
yeah, and it was to the point where I felt like I was questioning who I was because this thing that I love is suddenly causing me so much stress, and no matter how hard I try, I can't get better at it. And then
This
uh
hashtag identity crisis from math.
yeah, so then I think there was this one semester where I failed almost all my classes and I was on academic probation, and my mom and dad were like, what is happening to our daughter? And then they had like many patient and long conversations with me, often with tears from my end. And I came back from that winter break with like a new mindset, like, okay, I'm gonna give this one more shot, figure out how I can like graduate from college. And then I realized in that semester, well, two things. I was like overcommitted to many, many extracurricular activities. And then secondly, I saw math applied in the real world in a way I've never seen before. Like I saw case studies of how Coca-Cola saved billions of dollars using mathematical models to optimize their truck driver routes to like delivery and shipments and logistics. And it was just such a practical way to see how math helped some organization. And then that's what sparked my passion to see. I realized I don't like just math because it's math, but I love math because it can help people. And then throughout my career at Booz Allen is when I really explored how can I bring that into education policy.
Wow, yeah, thank you for sharing. I also did not like math. Well, I'm an English major, so I can't
That's
say anything.
great. Math major and English major together.
Yeah. But since you did become a data scientist for a while, why or what influenced you to pivot to a completely different career?
Yes, yes. So becoming a teacher was just a matter of time. It's always been a passion and something that I wanted to do. And there were many different reasons why the timing was now. So I became a teacher starting March 10th. That was my first day. So there was many different reasons why the timing had to be now. Um, but some of the underlying reasons to become a teacher was during my campaign, I realized how much teacher voice was missing. And even though I tried so hard to interview teachers and um, get their perspectives, but like one question just led to 10 more questions. So becoming a teacher myself would also help me like go like just dive right into, okay, like what's actually going on in the classroom. And also like teaching is something that I hold very dearly, and in informal settings I've been teaching for the past I want to say like 10 plus years in an informal way. So yeah, I'm very, very happy and excited that I can be a teacher now, and that oddly enough, it feels weird to say this, but I can financially afford to be a teacher where I am now, thanks to um, a lot of different reasons. But I'm really thankful that I have the financial capacity in a way that I could be a teacher right now.
Yeah. Um, so you said during your campaign was like when you realized really that you had to be in the system to beat the system, or like at least to understand it, right? So why did you decide to run for specifically Fairfax County School Board?
Yes. First of all, I had no intention of running for office ever in my life. And it took
Well, that was a big jump.
yes, very big jump. I was the student in class that was like too shy to even probably like make direct eye contact with the teacher. Like let alone like raise my hand and answer a question, but even like looking at the teacher is like kind of scary. Um, so anyways, um, but when I first came to the area, something really cool happened. I met the first ever Asian American elected official in the East Coast, and his name is Ilrong Moon.
Gotta snap for that.
Yeah, yeah, he got elected in the 1990s. So
Whoa.
yes,
Okay.
yes, and I was so what's the word? Surprised, dazzled that wow, I didn't know that elected officials were this approachable, and he was so kind and patient, and I bombarded him with questions, and then he encouraged me. He also told me to like slow down, Jung. You're not gonna fix education in a year, like. So I think he left an impression on me that um, they're a lot more accessible and approachable than I realized. And then thanks to him, I got involved in Fairfax County Democratic Committee. And that's where I met Ryan McElveen, who was at the time the youngest ever elected school board member, Fairfax County school board member. And then I think it took him like 3 years to convince me, like, Jung, you should really run for school board. Because the first time he said it, I was like, I didn't even take him seriously. I was like, wow, he has lost his mind today. It must be a stressful day for him. So it took him a long time to convince me. And I think when I started talking about it with my peers and colleagues, I was really lucky and blessed that my friends like saw that potential in me too. And not only did they see my potential, they wanted to join my team. So and of course, after I got through that huge lump of, okay, maybe I should, I saw like very clear issues that I was passionate about that I wanted to bring to Fairfax County. And they're student-centered mental health solutions, fair teacher pay, and career-oriented classes. And each of these were like very near and dear to my heart, and is still ongoing that I have been able to work on in different ways as well.
Wow, that's amazing. What do you think your biggest reward, biggest lesson or struggle that you have experienced during your campaign?
Oh, the biggest reward? It is so beautiful to me when I see people who could not be more different from each other, but united in the cause of wanting to do good for other people.
Mm.
So if you look at just like take two random volunteers of my campaign, you have like age gap, you have different backgrounds, different career experiences, like different upbringing, and they joined and volunteered because they were passionate about wanting to better the schools in Fairfax County. So that was the biggest reward for me. And biggest struggle. Oh my goodness, Karen. There's so many struggles. What I want to say is too hard because I want to encourage more people to run for office. So the struggles were worth it, everyone.
Even though there were so many, just
Yeah.
go for it.
And like each struggle that you go through, you can feel you becoming stronger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And learning too.
Yes, yes. So like it's like I remember like the next morning after I found out I lost.
Mm.
I think that night I lost, and the next morning was supposed to be like very sad and defeated. But instead, like I think the season of time after my campaign was the most like grateful, inspired, and empowered moments of my life, because I saw that although struggles like the crazy hours, nonstop meetings, events, spontaneous speeches, sometimes not even in English that I had.
Oh wow.
So like even like all that like random stress that comes at you like look back and you're just like, wow, I'm so thankful that I first of all like had loving parents that raised me to be who I am, had a community to support me, and that I have friends who believe in my vision, our collective vision, to
Mhm.
help schools, help students, help teachers. So yeah, overall very rewarding. I can't think of like a very specific struggle, but um,
It's okay. Would you ever run for office again?
oh, I hope to, but I also, Karen, I wouldn't mind if I never run for office.
I know it's super stressful.
Yeah, I think it would be fun to do it again, and I think I
Mhm.
learned a lot of lessons that I would try do things a little differently this time.
Mhm.
So I hope to.
Yeah, we'll be excited for you if you do. Um, so moving on from running for office, how has your teaching been like, especially your transition during COVID, like to online classes, and also now, I guess, transitioning back into some in person, although it's summer right now, but we'll be transitioning back into in person classes. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So my both my biggest reward and biggest struggle in teaching are my students.
Wow.
I'm so tickled and happy. I see at least two of my former students are with us today, and I'm like smiling so big seeing them here. So yeah, I adore and love and cherish my students. And like I think like anytime I hear any of their names at any point, I could be like 80 years old and I'll chuckle, like remembering my students. So definitely my biggest reward is getting to know my spunky, sometimes rowdy, and hilarious students. And they are relentless, they are patient, they keep trying and trying. And I want to encourage them to keep trying and trying. And my biggest struggle, actually, my first struggle, Karen, was um, going from PT, like San Diego client time, to a middle school schedule time. I had to wake up like 5 hours earlier than I usually do. And I would have like nightmares about sleeping in and working and missing work. But thank God I did not ever sleep in and miss work. And
Wait,
then
so you had to change from like PST to
to,
like ET,
yes,
but
yes,
also because of middle school time. So that's
yes,
more time. Okay.
exactly, exactly. So in Fairfax County, middle school students start earliest. So
Oh, that's interesting. This is very different from my experience.
yeah,
Here, middle schoolers start the latest.
oh, that would be amazing. All my students agree.
They start at 9. Their first class is like 9.
Karen, like they get to school by like 7:05.
My high school was 7.
Oh, high school's pretty rough though.
Yeah, I had my first class was calculus my senior year.
Yeah.
Calculus 2. It's
Oh,
just
you.
it was not 7 o'clock calculus 2.
No wonder you don't like math.
I had a great teacher though. It was just me.
Oh man, that's awesome. I hope my students can say that about me. I had a great teacher.
I I
Yeah.
bet they do, Jung.
Um, but yes, that was one of my biggest struggle was adjusting to that, and also like scheduling my bladder since I couldn't use the bathroom whenever I wanted.
It's actually so funny. I love it.
Yeah, I'm like always like 2 seconds away from a bathroom because I was working from home during COVID, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I can only schedule between these 5 minutes after like fifth period, um, and I think on a slightly more serious note, I will say when I mean my biggest struggle are my students, I mean that one thing that was really difficult for me to process and understand is that the for whatever reason, whether it's society or someone in their life, a lot of my students really doubt their potential in math. And for me, I can see them learning and grasping content, and I see them getting the material. So I know if they keep trying, they will reach this level of understanding. But before they even get there, they stop themselves. And for something or somehow they have told themselves, I can't do it. But for me, I'm like, you can do it. So that was something that I really struggled with. And also there's just so much working against them to focus in math class. Number one, there's TikTok. I will never be as entertaining as TikTok.
I just have to put it out there. Even though I look young, I do not understand TikTok at all. Either, so.
I'm so happy you said that, Karen.
Yes, I don't understand this new generation. Anyways, I will digress.
Yeah, but they like show me the videos, like Miss, I have a video to show you, and it is kind of funny, but then at the same time kind of sad because I'm like, you're probably watching this instead of listening to me.
What if you just like made TikTok math videos?
Right? I'm like, oh, how can I like incorporate
algebra?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, trying to figure that out. And then I think also because they're old enough to handle like household chores and taking care of their younger siblings, like some of my students like had like newborn siblings like while I was teaching them. So there's a big age gap too. So they end up like taking care of their siblings, household chores. There's just so much other responsibilities that's going on in the background instead of this laptop of this like enthusiastic teacher being like, but let's do math, guys.
No, I bet that was a struggle too. Even like for me, who's in college, I had to do that too because I had to go back home to take classes online, which means I had to take on a lot of, this is also true for a lot of first generation Asian Americans who have to take on a lot of like family responsibilities that
Yes.
yeah, add on to their like, it's like extra work from their schooling or from school. And I'm glad that you're cognizant of that and everything because, well, some of my professors were not, and like mental health was not taken seriously at my school either.
Oh.
So yeah, so I'm glad that you do is what I'm trying to say.
Also, props to you, Karen. A quick shout out to you, Karen, for being a college student during COVID. There are like obstacles that we can't even think of that you experienced and overcame, and somehow you managed to keep MX Asian American podcast going.
No, you give me too much credit.
Yeah,
No,
so
you give me too much credit.
Karen.
No, thank you. I know it's bad to compare and everything, but I have so much privilege too. I need to remind myself of that too. I know like other students who've graduated during the COVID year have had it a lot worse than I have. And I'm very blessed to not graduate during the COVID year. But still, yes, thank you. And how would you, like I said, I'm very grateful that you are cognizant of the mental struggles of your students right now. How do you try to make sure to incorporate outside of like their mental struggles, but also like, you know, the social political climate, everything that's been happening around the world and things like that into your class?
Yes. So this is hard. I will say that although I'm a math teacher, I feel like only 50% or even 40% of the time I'm teaching math. And there's a pretty significant percentage that I have dedicated to building relationships and giving them a space to talk about different topics. So every class I start off with an icebreaker. And one of my most memorable questions I ask them is, like, what is a big problem in the world you want to solve? And all the questions I ask them have nothing to do with math, but it's more to build relationships. And also, it's really easy to tie in math at the end anyway, because math isn't everything.
That is what a math teacher would say, though. a little bit suspicious.
So, um, so when I ask questions like that, I get things like poverty, racism, climate change, right? So, and I love that, and I want to give them the space to talk about that, and I want to tell them that I believe in them to pursue those things. And I also want them to know that a solid education will only help them to get there. And I try to emphasize that even if you don't have time outside of my class time to do homework, like with the time that you have with me, just put in your best. Like I only ask for your best within this time. So I want to connect everything that's happening in the world to like systemic racism, to Asian American hate, to Israel-Palestine conflicts. I want them to know that all of that does impact us and that we are a community. And this class time that we have together and this education that you have is strengthening you to tackle those things. So it could be now in a conversation with your friend, being there for a friend who is struggling with these issues, or it could also be for your futures as well.
I really, really like your icebreaker. I think I might take it. What is
Yeah.
a big problem you want to solve in this world? Um, yeah, it would be a very good icebreaker for like a meeting or whatever. But
Yeah.
I do appreciate you holding space for your students, especially when they're at that middle school age, um, puberty and everything like that. And it reminded me of my last term of school. I had a Professor Yin Yi,
Mhm.
who we did check-ins every day, like not every day, but like every class we would check in with each other. It was a really small and intimate class, but it was a way for us to get to know each other, but also to share whatever that was on our minds. So I think that making of the space is very important.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and I guess other than that, like other than making space for your students, what other ways do you like to? You said that everything comes back to math, and I'm still not convinced. So I need your argument on that.
Yes, I can think of very quick examples for math. Like there's a lot of data that could be easily manipulated to show like actually racism is not systemic, or you know, like people can manipulate data and percentages and trends to argue against or for a point. So if you have the strong mathematical background and critical thinking, you can counter those points that people make about data. And I also view math as, I know that it's very stress inducing to my students, because one of the questions I asked them was, how does math make you feel? And then I got like makes me want to cry, it makes me angry, it makes me stressed. And I was like, oh my God. So I view math also as it's a chance for them to tackle a fear they have and show compassion to each other while they do it. So you learn how to build trust, and you learn how to give trust as well, because you're creating that trust in that environment. And how do you create a safe space for your other friends and students? And that's what we need when it comes to tackling hate in this world. We need to learn how to be kind and practice being kind in action by, oh, is maybe a friend is feeling really insecure about raising their hand in math class, but I give them claps after they finish responding, even if they make a mistake, to show that it's okay to make mistakes and we grow together. And when we rely on each other, we're stronger together. So it's another way. It's
We're
another
always
way.
better together.
Yes, yes. That's another way
Um,
math can help solve these big problems.
well, Thank you so much. I think what I learned from this conversation was compassion, of course, and making space. Also learning from your own story and how you can take your own story and influence other people. So I think that's what you've been doing and are still doing, and will continue doing. So also thank you for this conversation. And also, again, thank you everyone who has attended this event. And I'll pass it on to Brack to monitor some of the listener questions.
Oh, if I may, I'd like to add three more things.
Go ahead.
So the first one is when it comes to teaching and my experience, I really do need to give a shout out to my school principal, Jason Panuti. Like, he is someone that took a chance on a teacher with no experience during COVID to hop on and learn and teach. So I'm very thankful to him and the positive community that he has created. And then secondly, this is for a shout out for Embolden. So emboldenme.org is a website, and they have a completely free career awareness program on Monday, August 9th. It's all day long and it's completely virtual, so any high school student can join. And you can find out more details on emboldenme.org. And even if you have never thought about your career at all, you're exactly the type of person we want you to show to this event. And then lastly, for future math students that may be listening, I'd like you to explore the daily challenge with Potion Low. And Potion Low is my absolute favorite math professor who believed in me, even though he's the one who teaches the geniuses of our country. He's a coach of our United States math team. So even a struggling math student like me, he's someone that believes in me to embrace math. And he believes that any student can become part of United States math team. So some of his classes that you want to explore will be on Daily Challenge. So those are all the things that I wanted to list. So thank you. Back to you, Brack.
Yes, I want to actually commend you, Jung. You had several students who believe they are your favorite, which I think is the best way a teacher can the best reaction a teacher can have in the classroom. That answers about 3 of the questions that were in the Q&A portion section of the of this presentation. But I do have a question from the chat room from Katie Goyette. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing public education in America?
Oh, thank you for that question. I took a really big breath when I heard that question. I will say that public education has a multi-dimensional challenge that they are facing, and there is no way I could pinpoint this is exactly it, and if we fix this, all our problems will be solved. I will, because even like while the time it takes for me to pinpoint it, another problem has formed. So I will say that I think public education has been the most challenging and complex problem that I have ever seen. And that's because if you look at what public education is supposed to do, it's to serve our current students who are their needs are constantly changing. And we want them to be as prepared as possible when they leave our school system. And that too, our world is constantly changing. And I will say that I encourage everyone who cares about education to don't think about think about the priorities, but don't limit yourself to what should be done, but think about what's in my own power to help. So for example, a lot of the school conversations here are catered towards students and parents. But the missing demographic that I've noticed are people like me, people without kids, but really care about education and want to help. And how we come in is we bring them career-oriented classes on a volunteer basis, programs like Embolden or volunteering through a partner school. So there's always something that's in your power and in your influence that you can do to support schools?
Thank you. I'm gonna I want to interject here a little bit from my own personal experience. Years ago, I knew a math teacher, a calculus teacher, and he taught it for so long. He actually would tell the students that he saw the world in the form of calculus. He was a farmer, like when he rolled his bales of hay out in the fields, he would think of it in terms of calculus. And you come from a diverse background, and I'm wondering how, with your studies in data and in mathematics, do you find yourself going back and forth between, communicating as we normally do, or do you find yourself thinking in terms of data and math?
That's such a great question. I think this is when my bilingual background helps, like communicating in my head back and forth between Korean and English is kind of like back and forth between being a math person and an English person. I can't take credit. English is really hard, Karen. I don't think I could ever be like an English person. But this is something that I have thought a lot about, Brack, because for me, I truly believe, what is the point of doing all these advanced calculations and like artificial intelligence research when it can't help people? Like, we need to bring talent into helping the people that need it the most. So for me, there are times when I can think like very academic and I'm in my math and statistics world. But in the end, I always think about, why does it matter? And who can this help? And oftentimes I lean more towards, I guess, like speaking in plain English, because the issues that I see in the world is what sparks my questions into, okay, like, can I use math to help here? Would technology or data science help here? But first I look at what is the problem that we want to solve, or what is the question at hand, and what is the missing data here? Do we have the full picture, and can we use data to get a bigger picture of this problem? So I will say I am definitely more a plain English person most of the time, but I love being in my math and statistics brain too.
I think I had that question as a little steep in the matrix. I keep seeing the trickle of all the zeros and ones dropping down on the screen, and
Yeah.
seeing the red dress or whatever.
Yeah.
But I have another question. How do you see? Last year you taught during, lots of the classes were virtual, and what do you look forward to in the upcoming year when we are looking at going back into all the classrooms?
Yes. So I'm really, really, really looking forward to everyone being there in person, because I would say almost a third of my students have struggled with Wi-Fi issues. So it's to the point where one of my students, I gave them a Google Slides quiz for them to work on, but their internet kept dropping their connection. So every time she tried typing on something, it wouldn't save any of her work. So she went to like great lengths to figure out how to even turn in this quiz. So I'm so glad that people with Wi-Fi issues, they won't have to deal with that if they're all in the school together. And I also look forward to deeper relationships, not just with me and my students, but also with each other. Because on my last day of school, and in Fairfax County, we don't, it's not forced for any student to turn on their video or audio. So on my last day of classes, I invited them, you guys can turn on your camera for a group picture. And then for them, it was for me, it was my first time seeing that. I was like, hi, Karen, it's good seeing you. And then for them, they were like, oh my gosh, it's my first time seeing my own classmate. So I'm excited for them to form deeper relationships with each other. And I think that will help with creating a safer and trusting environment for them to make mistakes, learn from each other, love math more, but also more importantly, be kind. So those are things I'm interested in. And I think you can get a little bit more creative when you don't have to think about balancing in-person and virtual students. And also, I think being on the screen too much affects our students' mental health a lot as well. So they're already probably on their screens for at least like 6-7+ hours a day. So like some of my students need to take breaks to because their head hurts from looking at the screen. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I only like hope and pray that with COVID variants that are coming out, and some of my students have started getting vaccinated, but I hope everyone is able to get vaccinated so that everyone feels safe and that we can be safe. Because COVID is still very serious. As much as I love math, like COVID is still very serious, and their health is of course of utmost importance as well.
I have another question from Chao Wu. There are very few Asian American teachers. What is your challenge and achievements as Asian American teacher?
Oh, thank you. I do want to give a shout out to Dr. Chao Wu. He's been one of my mentors and advisors from during the campaign. And we used to, when I was still working at Booz Allen, we were colleagues as well. And he's also a Howard County school board member and doing a fantastic job over there. So for me, I think it's probably it will be very, very arrogant of me to say that I've accomplished something in the 3 months that I was a teacher. If anything, like while I was a teacher, I felt like, oh man, I've been telling people that I'm a teacher, but I have not been through the worst of COVID like these other teachers have. Like I have so much more respect for teachers now that I am a teacher myself, even though I was already so inspired by teachers. And I will say that it is true that in Fairfax County, although the student population, I'd say like 20% of students are Asian in Fairfax County, but I would say less than 10%, maybe even 5 to 7% are teachers are Asian. So it is an underrepresented field among Asian Americans. And maybe one thing that I found that I was really glad that I am an Asian American teacher for 2 instances. One is as a former ESOL student, I can better empathize with my students who where English is not their first language. So I know how difficult it is to communicate in a language that's not your strength. And I think it also like can make you feel very uncomfortable and insecure sometimes. It's kind of like when I talk in Korean, I feel like I could sound like a 5th grader, but then I want them to know I'm actually a college educated person. I'm not a 5th grader. So I know that they are more intelligent and very eloquent, that they're not limited to just one language, even if they're struggling with English. And then secondly, it's a little bit more serious note, but I was a teacher during the Atlanta, Georgia shootings. And we had some time during class to address it. And I felt like I could be more open and real and personal with them about being Asian American, and can invite people to contribute and ask questions and even ask me questions. So showing that perspective was also meaningful to me, that during this time, I can have this space, provide this space for my students.
That's great. yeah, I really appreciate the the opportunity to reach out to others, especially during the tragic times that we have. And I think that's one of the really big lessons we got from this last year is that we really do need each other. Let's see, I don't have any more questions, so I think we'll just begin to wrap it up. I want to thank everyone for being here. And like I said, I'm still getting Q&As from your students, Jung. You have, your influence is universal. But I did want to, I wanted to thank everyone who came to view this presentation tonight. The Alexandria Library has quite a number of virtual programs that we offer. This week, in fact, we have several programs coming up for children and adults. One of the, let's see, I'm looking up some right here in front of me. We have coming up on Thursday, well, actually coming up on Wednesday, we have NAMI in Our Own Voice, presented by the NAMI of Northern Virginia. It's the NAMI trained presenters bravely share their personal journeys toward recovery and wellness to increase understanding about mental health conditions and inspired hope. We also have coming up on Thursday, we have the Digital Resources Happy Hour. That's going to be Thursday from 4 to 5, where you can join us for a happy hour and learn about the library's different digital resources. So again, I want to thank everyone for coming here tonight. And I want to thank Karen and Jung, especially. This has been a great program. And I'm looking forward to listening to more of Karen's podcast. It's MX Asian American, and you can find it on any of your podcast platforms. And I've listened to several of them, which is how I discovered this, and we got this rolling here. And it's they're all variety of subjects and topics and people of very diverse different backgrounds and experiences, and it's well worth subscribing to. Jung, I want to thank you for coming, and my wife is also a teacher in the Fairfax County, and I know the challenges that have been faced by all teachers this last year and more to come. So if we will, we'll finish up now. And like I said, I've recorded the podcast tonight. Will be posted on the website, and it eventually will be presented on Karen's podcast. You want to say any more about that, Karen, before we sign off?
Sure. Again, thank you, Brack, for reaching out to me and for this event. So this episode will be published this upcoming Sunday, July 4th. So looking forward to that. And also thank you again, everybody who came to the event.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everyone.